Hi, welcome to the opening event of the DT2 Invest Launchpad. I'm Sarah Diane, Ek, CEO of Surprise and also founder of Sandblock, which is a blockchain protocol. DT2 stands for Deep Tech for Digital Transformation. As you just saw, this project is funded and supported by the European Commission. This is an investment support program for the fields of artificial intelligence and blockchain technologies. It aims to reduce the investment gap for deep tech startups from those both sectors. And this project is being brought to life by France Digital and other European consortium members. This program also plans to build a bridge between existing European Commission and European Investment Fund actions and other initiatives, public or private, with four main goals. The first one is to understand the market and stakeholders' needs. Then to develop a dynamic European-wide investor community focusing on AI and blockchain. Then to make Europe a responding funding ecosystem for local startups. And the last is to build a portfolio of promising, highly innovative startups and tech companies ready for investment. So just before starting our panel, I'll give you two informations. The first one is that tomorrow there will be a pitching session for blockchain and AI European startups. We will have 9 startups. So I'll be in the jury, and the jury will be also composed of VCs and business angels. So if you want to register, you can find the event in the application. And the second information is that there will be also 16 studies of AI and blockchain strategy, public funding schemes, and also investment programs that will be published at the end of the month by the European Commission and consortium. So France Digital will circulate them. Of course, if you want to find more information about the DT2 Invest Launchpad project, you can visit their virtual booth on the application. So now I'm delighted to have on this panel 4 amazing guests from across Europe to discuss AI and blockchain investments. Peteris Dilgalvis, Head of Unit Digital Innovation and Blockchain at the European Commission. Yves Pendaven, Head of Sectors in the Unit for Technologies and System for Digitizing Industry at the European Commission as well. Claire Houry, General Partner at the VC Ventec, investing in both AI and blockchain early stage companies in France, but also in other European countries. And Renaud Vedel, Ministerial Coordinator for Artificial Intelligence at the French Ministry of Economy. Hi. So my first set of questions would be for Peteris Dilgalvis. So your unit is very much involved in the DT2 program. What do you hope the DT2 Invest Launchpad project will do for blockchain startups in Europe?
Well, we see that disruptive technologies are challenged in finding access to finance and investment, and which is what they need to scale up. Because most investors, or many investors, don't have the technical expertise to evaluate the market prospects for different technological solutions. Investors considering digital innovation such as AI and blockchain may think that they are too complex and shy away from investments in these strategic areas. They need to know the track record of the startup, the collateral and revenue prospects it can offer, and the extent that it's dependent on obtaining intellectual property rights. They may prefer to stay with more traditional industries. We also see that the challenge is particularly acute for Europe. For example, since 2011, 2/3 of global equity investment in artificial intelligence has gone to the US. This is fully consistent with the US's overall strong position in the global venture capital market. An OECD report recently provides some more detailed insights into these figures. Overall venture capital investment growing rapidly in Europe from 5 billion in 2013 to about 32 billion euro in 2019, but it still remains very limited compared to the US, where it's about 4 times larger. When we look at the other part of our AI blockchain funds clientele, blockchain technologies have a slightly better situation in Europe compared to the US. Most investments in blockchain startups are directed in US companies with a total of 44 billion, 33%. European companies still have attracted a solid 2.9 billion, 22%, and China follows closely with a total of 2.8 billion. So with this platform for investment and the AI blockchain fund that it is supporting, which is going out through the European Investment Fund, we foresee having more support for these startups being able to scale up here in Europe, utilize the advantages of the digital single market, and ideally scale globally in AI with artificial intelligence, with European characteristics reflecting EU values, and in blockchain as being a way to have an alternative to the platform economy, a more decentralized, what you could call Web3 internet.
Thank you. So, what for you are the biggest regulatory blocks in building European blockchain champions? And are there certain Euro countries that you can single out as having strong investment policies that support blockchain technologies?
Yes, I think we saw over a whole set of years. I mean, my journey, you could say, with blockchain and some of the decentralized technologies started about 2013 when I was a visiting fellow at the University of Oxford, looking at innovation policy. And then when I returned, I became soon afterwards, with my colleagues from DG FISMA, the co-chair of the FinTech Task Force. So we have looked at the development of the technology and the market developments for some years. We did not rush in with regulation, though some instruments like anti-money laundering included cryptocurrencies in their scope some time ago. But now we have, since the adoption of the digital finance package recently, a set of regulatory proposals on markets in crypto assets, intending to give legal clarity, which is also a fundamental legal principle of the European Union, letting the market players know what they need to do. And so we don't have any types of tokens in a gray area. And secondly, there is also the pilot, which is a regulatory sandbox plus. And I can say sandbox plus because it is actually even lifting some requirements for central securities depositories, where the distributed ledger technologies do not require such a middleman. So once these regulatory proposals are adopted by the European Council, the Council of the European Union, the member states, and the European Parliament, they will be enforced in Europe. Another area that we see that could require some legal clarity are smart contracts to ensure that there's not fragmentation across borders. We had a public consultation on this in the context of the Digital Services Act. Probably the legislative proposals now will be centered more on aspects in EID and in data, so perhaps in different legislative proposals, but that is still to be adopted. And when we talk about or proposed and then eventually adopted, and then when we talk about both legal frameworks and investment climate, I think you see legal frameworks like France with the Loi Pacte, and also some of the venture capital in France as being a nation that is moving forward very progressively. Germany with the blockchain strategy, and obviously also some of Europe's venture capital investment, and that's particularly looking at the decentralized technologies. You also have interesting regulatory sandbox initiatives in the central bank in Lithuania. You have legislative frameworks in Malta. And now it is seen that we can come together with this common European digital single market approach to ensure that we don't have fragmentation. So it's exactly the right time for the platform for investment in AI and blockchain, and also for our startups to really be able to scale up for strategic autonomy that we have at least some of the global players here in Europe.
Thank you very much. Just to finish, could you tell us a bit more about the European Commission's AI and blockchain investment?
Yes, I mean, as I said, we have this AI blockchain investment fund, which is now fully operational, and it has started to implement a first phase of investments in highly innovative digital SMEs and startups. The fund is being operated by the European Investment Fund and works closely with venture capital investors across Europe. In the first phase, the fund is investing some 700 million euro of equity investments for highly innovative early stage and startup and scale up companies. The program will be scaled up in 2021, including through the Invest EU program. And you already mentioned it, the DT2 Invest Launchpad, which the Commission has set up with you, in order to give investment support to enhance access to finance, in particular in the form of equity through the innovative and higher risk AI and blockchain startups that some investors tend to shy away from. So this is why we saw a market failure here, where we wanted to approach this with the public sector initiative.
Thank you very much, Peter. So let's continue now with Yves van der Ven, our other representative from the European Commission. Hello, Yves.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you. Do you see the work of the AI unit at the Commission as different from blockchains, or are they complementary?
Well, in terms of scaling up the finance for such critical technologies, artificial intelligence, blockchain, deep tech, that's indeed a common objective. We are trying to push very hard here on the innovation and the adoption of those technologies, as well as the financing. However, while it is complementary, AI is actually a family of critical technologies which is really broad-ranging with intrinsic features that require also dedicated action on innovation, on adoption, on regulation, skills, governance. So on artificial intelligence, we are even talking here of consumer products or services, health diagnostics, speech recognition, decision support, or up to the more deeply rooted in infrastructure for fraud detection to ensure cybersecurity. In ensuring cybersecurity, this is also something which is complementary to blockchain, actually. So if you look at this, at the disruptive nature of artificial intelligence, also at the maturity of the AI technology, you see that it's a bit of a different animal than in the zoo. Investment gap year by year in artificial intelligence in Europe is 5 to 10 billion per year. So it shows already it's a mature technology, and it makes it necessary to have European national programs which are really fit for purpose. On this point, I would like to also compliment Peteris on the sense that the AI blockchain pilot, which we launched together, has now recently been also complemented by the European Investment Bank with an additional 150 million fund, which would actually accompany the growth of AI companies. You know, growth is in fact what we are mostly missing or where we are weaker in Europe. And that fund would actually be able to fund greater ticket size in the range of 10, 15 million. So that's a bit the kind of thinking that we do together. Last point which you mentioned, open technological autonomy, which we prefer to use rather than sovereignty. also requires to work jointly on these family of enabling technologies. So there again, yes, we have very much working together to get Europe, although an open continent, but to have also a mastery of its technology and have the choice of the different technologies.
Okay. So thank you. You are deciding now on the European next budget until 2027. So you have some outcomes that you are expecting in terms of investment, and also alongside investment, what else is the key to the success of AI across the continent?
Yes, yes. And indeed, that in terms of the budget of the Commission, and here we are talking, our jargon is to say multi-annual financial framework. It defines the budget for the European Commission programs for 7 years, of which there are many, and this is roughly a bit more than 1 trillion. Let's put it like this. But don't forget that there will be also an out of budget, out of the normal budget, there will also be something called the Next Generation EU. It comes with top up for some of our programs, but it comes also with the Recovery and Resilience Facility. And that is out of the EU budget, and that's for until 2023. On the EU budget, probably most of you know the Research and Innovation Program, Horizon Europe. There will be a big part there, which we were under digital industry and space, where together with, in partnership with industry, with academia, we are going to finance artificial intelligence, data, and robotics. This is really the way of working in order to create this critical mass and to make sure that we leverage the European funding. We should also not forget that we launched a new program, which is different from a research program, which is called the Digital Europe program. This program, it's 7-8 billion, depends on whether we mention price of 2018 or 2021. It's a capacity building program. We want to have Europe with the capacity to invest in a number of critical technologies. Artificial intelligence is one of the main 3 technologies which has been selected, along high performance computing and cybersecurity. Plus the fact that we also need to make sure that these technologies are adopted, the adoption of which is very important. And here, as part of the Digital Europe program, we also want to co-finance with member states innovation infrastructure, which helps SME to acquire, to adopt these technologies, so lower the knowledge gap and make sure that they have the right information, the right coaching on the digital information before they make the decision to invest, so they can test these technologies to invest. And here we call it Digital Innovation Hub. And the Digital Innovation Hub is roughly 10% of the Digital Europe program. That's really how we want to get it, this broad wave of digitalization, which helps also the take-up of artificial intelligence. There are other programs. InvestEU is a program of financial instruments. There are also the cohesion policy, so the regional funding, where we also would like to see a smart Europe taking place. That's also the opportunity for member states and for regions to invest locally in local projects. If I go to the Recovery and Resilience Facility, we are here talking of a 672 billion euro, half in loan, half in grant to member states, in order for them to make sure that we not only recover from the crisis, but more importantly, that we prepare for the future. 20% of this facility is dedicated to digital. So this is really a unique opportunity to really change our gear and to make sure that we see a step change for Europe to become the digital continent in the next 10 years, the European digital decade. And here member states have also a role to play, procuring solutions. So if we look at even the impact of COVID today, yes, liquidity is getting lower, but it seems that artificial intelligence is actually attracting appetite still, given its nature to bring solution in a digital way of working. So you see, all of these are what we would expect out of the intervention. But funding is not the only one aspect that we have to look at. Market assessment studies recently have again shown that it's connecting the SMEs with the right investor in the right network is the number 2 limitation for the uptake of artificial intelligence, for example, to become really here an AI leading continent. And this is indeed why we have DT2.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. You just talked about the effect of the coronavirus pandemic on the startups. About this, the European Commission issued guidelines to protect European critical assets from foreign investment. What about the European AI startups in terms of sovereignty? Should you push those regulations ahead or?
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Let's clarify maybe the question before. EU investment alone on the European continent will not be enough. So the EU pledged to be an open economy, which is welcoming foreign investment. However, as Commissioner Breton said it quite often, it's important that operating in the EU, a foreign entity operating in the EU, would also play by the European rules and values. So it means we should not be naive, and therefore, that's why the Commission has started now to build a number of trade defense instruments in order to avoid predatory behavior of, let's say, state-owned companies or companies who are building up huge monopolies on some of the aspects. So we really stated framework, screening of investment, notably those with predatory intention, looking significantly into trade defense instruments are the things that we would like to see. Now, should it be regulated? I do not think that there is a need for a specific regulation on foreign investment. There will be guidelines which are going to be published, and we are going through this exercise a bit like CFIUS in the US to screen these foreign direct investment. But what is more important if we really want to have a critical impact is we need really to have a single market in the EU, which can help a startup in Germany to actually very quickly conquer the European market and use it as a springboard. So this is one single market and not a market of 27 data and AI regulation. And that's where we would have to see how to find a balance between respecting the EU values, which also at the same time avoid to stifle innovation.
Thank you so much, Yves. So now I'm very happy to bring Claire Houry, former Vice President of France Digital. So hello, Claire, you are General Partner at the VC Ventec. Could you please tell us what the major trends are investors taking advantage of in AI and blockchain verticals, and where do you see these areas developing?
Okay, so let me start first with the AI. So AI technology is embedded in almost every project every startup we are looking at today. So we see a continuous move to verticalized AI applications. So AI for fintech, AI for health tech, for transport, for automotive, you name it. This is quite easy to understand. The startups want to demonstrate to the investor that they have direct market application. So that's something that we see everywhere. To give you major trends about what we're seeing in our deal flow, I would start first with one big trend, which is about dealing with unstructured data as opposed to structured data. So extracting value from any type of format, text, pictures, audio, video. So while in the past, applications were more about price optimization in finance, churn prediction for retail application using structured data, today we see more application analyzing clients' feedback, product documentation, audio files, and therefore using NLP, natural language process algorithm, to work and to extract value from this unstructured data. Another big trend that has been mentioned by the previous person is we see those startups targeting SMEs. So using AI as a way to make SMEs business more efficient. So to give some example, for example, in France, we have a company called Penny Lane, which is in the accounting sector. So creating an accounting 2.0 for SMEs. In Sweden, a company Capsito, which is to provide automated financing solution for SMBs. Same in France, Arthurine, AI-based community manager for SMBs. So all those projects are about making the SMBs more efficient using AI. And in terms of sector, as said before, I mean, all sectors are transformed by AI. And we see interesting companies in all sectors. But if we want to identify some sectors that are less usual than the retail, the transport, the healthcare, I would mention the industry. And the industry, the IoT, the Internet of Things sector, where we speak more about embedded AI. So this is here the implementation of AI scenery, such as predictive maintenance most of the time within embedded systems. And here it's interesting because it has implication on both software and hardware. Another sector that has been mentioned as well, cybersecurity, with the development of e-commerce, digitized collaboration, cyber attacks have increased. And we see projects either in the sector of protecting the infrastructure, but also training workforces to identify cyber attacks. So cybersecurity is also a big field of application for AI. And last one I wanted to mention on AI was the dev tool. So using AI and building AI assistant for developers, so to make them more efficient for coding, for writing documentation, and so being more efficient in the way they work. So I would say that is currently the big trends in AI. On the blockchain front, it's less on the cryptocurrency front that we see projects, and more on the traceability, the decentralized aspect of the blockchain. So to ensure data integrity without a trusted party. So project that could be described as blockchain-enabled business process. So to use blockchain as a way to reconstruct a value chain. So it could be in the food industry, it could be in the supply chain, it could be also, we've seen recently in Germany, tracking the innovation process on the blockchain to certify IP assets. So really everything that is about decentralized organization. One thing that I'd like to say on this blockchain project, on the customer side, we see recently that these blockchain projects are still seen as being able to revolutionize their business, but on the short term, the customer corporates have a tendency to delay. The ROI is not exactly clear on the short term, and they're part of a big project. So that's what we can see from the startup point of view.
Okay, thank you. And on this topic, is there one technology specifically where you think insufficient investment is hindering the startups?
In fact, I would say that on this AI and blockchain, the challenges that is faced by European startups relates mostly not really with technology, but with HR. So capacity to recruit the necessary talents. Competition is hard between corporates, between the large GAFAM and startups on these talents, and I think that's really key issue for our European startups to be able to recruit the necessary talents. One also that has been mentioned, issues with data sharing, data protection. I mean, it's great to have regulation that protect end users' data, but it should not prevent companies to do business. So we have to be very careful about implementing European regulation. Then the last part, maybe more on the financing and financing deep tech. So here I'm speaking about more research. I mean, a research project. I think that great tech with strong ROIs in the end organically attracts investment. But with more and more complex tech, and especially in deep tech, that's what I was mentioning, the development and therefore the proof of concept phase takes longer because the tech is just so complex. The revenue is generated later, and investors are waiting for a more proven product market fit. And so this delays investment. So this is something that really is a concern, and that what we need to take into account. I would say both public sector investors, obviously, and the corporates, to be able to finance those early stage company, deep tech early stage companies.
Thank you. We saw earlier with Peter Zigalvis that the strength of investment in the US in comparison to Europe. For you, do these investments in this vertical differ between the US? And if so, how? Did you see some differences in those verticals?
Yes, I think it's not only the US. I mean, at Ventec, we have operations in Europe and in China. And China is in the race and maybe ahead of the US as well on those fields. For example, yes, clearly, I mean, there are topics that we see in China on AI that will not happen actually, I think, shortly in Europe. For example, application using face recognition in the retail sector are really examples that we wouldn't see. So yes, I agree. I think in Europe, we have some specific value, and we see also that countries have different maturities when it comes to implementing AI solution. And that's what we see out of from our different offices in France, in Germany, in the Nordics. For example, in the Nordics, we see more openness to fintech solution. Entrepreneurs are less reluctant to share their financial information if they believe that in analyzing this data, their business can be more efficient. In Germany, and that's maybe also part of the cluster around some industry, we see more projects with application in the automotive industry, in the robotics. In France, retail, we see a lot of projects in the retail sector, so predictive marketing, conversational chatbots, enhance optimization of the customer experience. In healthcare as well, in the diagnosis sector, projects like cardiologs. And as I said before, tool development, Ponycode, Codist AI, we have very strong and ambitious entrepreneur on this field. For blockchain, I think that Europe has really a trump card to play because there are sectors of activities that are more of a concern for European citizens than for Americans or Chinese citizens. So, for example, the agriculture, the food industry, so project for blockchain for equitable and sustainable agriculture, it's almost cultural for us Europeans. We look at our food, our health differently from the Americans and the Chinese. And so blockchain to ensure traceability and quality control on how products are grown, stored, transported, proof of origin, compliance with environmental rules, organic labeling, fair trade, all those topics using a decentralized blockchain structure. We see projects in this field and are typically projects that would be more developed in Europe than in other countries. And one company as well, Tilcal, which is a blockchain-based traceability food solution. Another topics, the second topics that I could think of for blockchain as well in Europe, it actually is in GovTech. Public sector is important in Europe, and to have a decentralized network supported by a blockchain will enable to tailor services for specific citizens, to also ensure that the governments are more efficient, more transparent, more auditability. And so for all of that, I think there is some potential for European startup to develop. That hasn't happened yet in this GovTech, but that should happen.
Okay, thank you very much, Claire. So now let's bring Renaud Vedel, Ministerial Coordinator for Artificial Intelligence of France. Hello, Renaud.
Hello.
So the French AI national strategy is one of the most mature. What has France done to coordinate with other European countries?
I wouldn't say we are better than others. I just would say that we are keen to be in the move and as most rapidly as we can. I think then the first thing with respect to the two first speakers is that we have to synchronize with Europe. We have the chance to live in a huge market, which digital market should become more and more integrated. It's integrated, but maybe not so much. That's why we need to push it forward. And that's the whole idea of the AI coordinated plan. It will be renovated next year, as the Commission has announced, and we are also revising and adapting our own strategy, which was devised and framed in 2018 in order to synchronize. For instance, when Yves mentioned the digital innovation hubs, we in France, we have 20-odd in digital innovation hubs or candidates for such hubs, and we have to find the incentives, the financing from the state, so that we have the French national counterpart for financing with EU and with private investors. So that's the kind of thing we need to do. Another area that was mentioned by Claire is the lack of human resources. We have another good thing. It's very ominous. That's our multi-annual investment framework, which is called Plan d'investissement d'avenir, investment future programs, is being also rebuilt. It will start from next year. So we have both at the same time a new European multi-annual frameworks and a new multi-annual investment for the futures in France. And of course, we are taking advantage of this synchronization to put and to advance AI strategies. I cannot make any announcements. That will be the minister's announcements when the decisions will be made, but we are in the process of framing them, and participating in such debates help us to understand the priorities and where we should go. And for instance, human resources will be a very important part of that. At the moment, we have a lot of engineering schools, a lot of universities have evolved, have created masters, for instance, in data science or AI, but we need to do more. The French president last year has set an objective of doubling the number of people at the master level, but we should also do AI plus X, let's say AI plus agriculture, AI plus health, AI plus environment, AI plus whatever you need and think about. Since AI is a set of general purpose technologies. And also we do not limit ourselves to experts. We also need to create a lot of new jobs, new career paths. that will be like technicians. We know that one of the major problems today is that sometimes we often hear that 80% of the time of data scientists is devoted to technician stuff and technical level, like data preparation, data improvement, or just working with the results of AI being in production, and that is something we have to correct, because it discourages data scientists, and sometimes they then go to the best paid sector, and it slows the diffusion of AI. Another very important thing that we have that we want to tackle is the diffusion of AI in the SMEs. Not every SME has the means to develop a team, a data science team, to make a 360-degree assessment of what AI could improve for its processes. Because AI is a composition technology. It's not always the full of this. It's not the end-to-end solution. But it is very important to use it to better manage your data, to improve your product, to improve your services. But it has to be integrated with a physical system or with other digital systems. And this integration is difficult. So in the Plan de Relance, in the recovery plan that was announced by Cédric O and Bruno Le Maire early September, we have got some money, dozens of millions, to help framing a new tool that will help SMEs to have to be accompanied in the discovery of AI. More details will follow, but this is very important. And another very important line for the states: the state should not do what firms or private entrepreneurs do better, but we have to create an ecosystem. And sometimes this creating an ecosystem is to help these emerging markets to develop. It can be it can be scrapping some legal or regulatory bottlenecks. Sometimes it happens. And we should be more and more pushing towards sandboxes. And there are areas where we perfectly know that the legal and the legal people are sometimes a bit lost with all these technologies. And for instance, when you deal with personal data, we have to build a very strong model protective of the individual and protective of privacy. But at the same time, one has to acknowledge that AI is an inductive set of technologies, that AI takes lots of data, and then when AI is trained, there is no longer any personal data, because the personal data may be used sometimes, they may be pseudonymized, but we have to recognize this. And if you ask for everything being private, sometimes you destructure the data and you cannot then extract the value. So all that kind of thing we have to take into account, and to have to deal with it. And the last part, somebody has already said it, so I will be light, and I think it was Claire, or maybe another speaker, that said we are going to evolve towards a more decentralized, to more edge computing AI. And this is very important that we invest in those technologies, and that means from the specific hardware to the specific software that will be able to deal with the needs of the digital twins that are starting to emerge, either on the territorial level or either in industries. And sometimes the states is better placed to help the private sector actors to cooperate in a private-public partnership. And that's also a very important thing where we should head to. First, with embedded AI, which means helping AI being embedded on many Internet of Things objects. And also, now we see that AI is very easy to use in non-critical systems, like recommendations for a film or advice, but it could also be used in many sectors, but where we have to be very careful about robustness, safety, and non-discrimination. And we need to adapt the tools that industry has developed for AI. And this is something which is a lot of work.
Sure. Yes, thank you. So we have 2 minutes left, so we will have to be quick on this last question. Do not forget also to use the hashtag FranceisAI for all the audience. So Renaud, one of our last question of this panel is, why do you think France does not yet have a blockchain strategy in the same way it has for AI? And will France ever have a national blockchain strategy?
Well, I'm not the one to answer that question. I think blockchain is a very important thing, and sometimes I've also spoken to people that can mix AI and blockchain. But yeah, I think the idea that we need to have organizations that are less siloed, that are more project oriented, and I think to have a blockchain strategy would be a very project oriented, like a very startup like mindset, and I think it will be very important. And I will talk the idea up to my boss.
Great. So on this last point, I would like to thank you everyone for your participation on this great panel. And now we are ready to leave. So thank you very much. And do not forget to use the hashtag FranceIsAI, and see you. Thank you.